Okay, there's no sound in these old films, so I'm going to go ahead and do a commentary. Right now it's May of 2004, and I'm just really doing a commentary for these movies, just so there's a record of why they exist, what they are, and stuff, in case anyone finds these in 300 years from now on this DVD. This is truly, really and truly, you could say, this is my first film. It's a story, it's a narrative called The Shrinking Potion. I was probably, this is 1979, I'm thinking, and I guess I would have been how old? 13? This is our house on Mary Drive, and I had written this story. Really my first narrative piece. I had done a lot of experiments, which I'm not going to put on here, just various stuff, getting the feel of how the camera works and stuff. This is Super 8mm film, and this is my very first attempt at stop motion animation. It kind of blows my mind that I actually thought that it would match. I put on this blue outfit, only blue outfit I could come up with to match the blue doll. And the reason that I have a gold blanket behind me is to try and match the gold, whatever that thing is, piece of pottery there. And I'm supposed to be reaching up, grabbing this cord. It's not that obvious, I guess, but yeah, this is definitely 79. It could be 80, I suppose. I'm not sure, actually, because we're still on Mary Drive in Tucson. So here I am. I got this idea from some movie I watched with my friend of ours named Rita Irwin. She was teaching a film class at Palo Verde, I believe, high school. And so a kid did this similar thing, and I actually stole the idea just the idea of making a book come down and smashing the spider. And now I'm supposed to be back in the kitchen to drink the shrinking potion again. And for some crazy reason, this is supposed to make me normal again. Does that make any sense? I mean, why would you drink it again and be normal again? That's the only way I can think of a good way to end it. And of course, this film is so scratched and it's just shot. It's too bad there's no such thing as a negative for this stuff. This is all we have. It's scratched forever. It's my first movie. My mom did all the cinematography. God, I guess I was a pretty young kid making my first movie here. And we did the scratching. I scratched the film in order to give the potion that scratchy, weird thing. It's supposed to be like all lit up and bright. And that's the end of the shrinking potion. Well, you can't even read these credits. I shot him in the bathtub. Special thanks to Andy Felix. Without him, this movie could not have been made because I credited him with buying me the camera as a Christmas present. And now we have The Lost Land. So after having some success with that stop motion animation in the shrinking potion, I launched my big dinosaur epic with a mural, really wonderful jungle mural Andy had in the house painting. No idea where it went now. And just stuck it on a chair with a cardboard bottom. You'll see later that all of my clay creatures are completely gray because by then all the clay mixed together, whereas here it's kind of awful looking because they're all different colors, arms, legs, bodies. And the animation's real choppy. Of course, I had to have a happy ending. I'm only 13 when I made this. I can't have the dinosaur die. So at the end of this, he gets back up, and he's apparently just fine, even though he just had his neck bit. And I was really into Ray Harryhausen, Willis O'Brien. Studied, if I had been a more studious individual, I could have gone on to be an ILM because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do special effects, and stop motion animation really fascinated me. It still does, but it's not used much. This is probably 1979, I believe, when I first started making films. I got interested in this sort of Bewitched stuff, where you're disappearing stuff, and yeah, Bewitched was the first example I ever figured out how they did the special effects with the genie and all that. And I Dream of Jeannie and stuff like that. You can see me lift up a little right there because I realized at the last minute that I need to be up for the chair to be taken away. And of course, this is Philip. He's a buddy of mine who I still keep in contact with. He was he's been in Iraq the past over a year now, fighting terrorism. getting rid of Saddam. He's back in Tucson right now, I believe. Here's my Jaws t-shirt.
I think he's actually married or getting married soon. And next we're going to go to this wonderful pool fight. I always had to win every fight, of course.
We coordinated this really awesome fight scene. Pretty violent, I might add. Boom. Pow. Yeah, I coordinated this. My mom filmed it over at my grandmother's pool on the east side of Tucson. Kerr, splash. And this is actually edited right where I hit him because you could really tell that I was very far away from him. So I cut out a few frames there, and it looked like it accentuated the violence, the impact.
The Creature from Venus. Another little stop motion short. I think my brother-in-law Darren might like this one because it's got a toy cop car in it. And this kind of, interestingly enough, is a little bit reminiscent of the World Trade Center, these two buildings. I always thought I was dumb and I didn't give this thing arms. He needs arms. And this, of course, is right in the living room of Mary Drive. You can see that bright red carpet. Always made a great looking backdrop. And more scratching of the film material, which was so tough. I mean, you're sitting there with a little safety pin and a tiny little 8mm frame scratching and trying to figure out where to scratch in the frame.
Okay, here's a bunch of other experiments. Now, notice how bad the animation is, real choppy. That's because this is not actually an animation camera. I would just simply flick the camera button as light as I could to only take a few frames and then do the animation. You'll see the second half of this compilation is real smooth animation because it was a real animation camera that could take still frames. And this is it. This is where that begins. I actually have a lot of other stuff from the old camera that I didn't even bother putting on here. This is King Kong, and now we're at the house on Rudolph. We had just moved to the northwest side. I didn't know anybody. This is before I met Pete or Bill or any of those guys from high school. In fact, this might be the summer before I started high school. This might be the summer of 81, I guess that would be. No, this is 80. We moved here in 80. I don't know. I have to look that up.
And of course, I just wanted to show some of this interesting stuff with the time lapse that we did. I actually went in here and slowed it down by about 80% slowed down, just to see what this would look like in like real time. Of course, it's choppy and it looks like a surveillance video if I do that, but it kind of shows what we were doing. And basically, it's when you're doing time lapse, you have your cameras clicking off frames, something like this: click, 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 and it's taking a frame. And there's 24 frames a second in film. So that's how you get the effect. And when you see my arms up and then down and up and down, I'm just lifting them up for each click of the camera. And this is even faster time lapse. I'm not sure what the speed is.
Here's some faces I did, and there's this big brontosaurus that comes up. They're all sort of incomplete experiments. The first time I ever tried it with this new camera, and I found out that I have to do a lot less movement, meaning I have to do a lot more increments because everything goes by so fast because it's single frame instead of like 3 or 4 frames the way I used to do it. I also had to develop this very ambitious King Kong project, my own claymation version of King Kong. And Andy helped me build the sets. I had built an armature, and sadly enough, there's almost no photography or anything of it because it just, what happened was I joined the band. I got all big into drums, or returned to drums. I was actually into drums for most of the 70s, second half of it anyway. And then I started making movies, and then went back to drums during high school. And then after high school, oddly enough, I went back to movies. So I can't seem to make up my mind.
I started animating other creatures besides monsters. I have a cute cat, a cute dog over here, and
it's supposed to be a hippopotamus. Here's a series of really cool stop motion experiments. This stuff's incredibly time consuming.
Yeah, that was one of the toughest things ever. A lot harder than clay. This is one of those notepads that you just draw on, and made a whole bunch of different drawings. Kind of an abstract, weird thing. I thought I'd put it in the film. when I made it years ago.
Everyone in the family used to love this bed making thing. It's pretty cool. It came out better than I ever thought it would too. I thought it was going to be the stupidest thing I'd ever done. And I took it home, took the film over to Thrifty at Ina and Thornydale, which is about all that was there, Thrifty and Lucky in the 7-Eleven. Of course, now there's a ton of stuff there.
I thought it was going to be really lame. When I got it home, I was really kind of blown away how cool of a scene it was.
That's always been really funny, scooting around on my butt like that. Kyle, for some reason, always remembered that. This is supposed to be a basketball with a life of its own, but as you can see the sun going down, it really ruined the effect because it's not supposed to be so time-lapsey. It was my first and only time-lapse I tried to do with the clouds. This is actually my favorite animation I've ever done.
It came together so well. I just remember being there for like 3 or 4 or 5 hours, whatever this took to do. All in one sitting. You can't stop once you start. You forget where you are. Occasionally, if you freeze frame it, you can see my hand getting in there a few times because you get really confused when you're doing this animation, whether you've taken a frame or not, whether your hand is in the way or not. But this is really good stuff. You can see that on the side it starts collecting over there.
That was my favorite piece I've ever done. This is probably my second piece. This is just sort of made up as I went along, having fun with a ball of clay. Spent the afternoon doing this. It takes a long, long time. You talk about patience. You got to have serious patience to do this kind of stuff. And I really want to preserve it on DVD like I'm doing. And it's just too bad it's so incredibly scratched to hell and back.
It's fun. It was just a lot of fun making this up as I went, being creative. You can see the clay on the table starting to come together.
This is a gargoyle. I got this idea from one of the Harryhausen Sinbad movies. And let me tell you, having those wings going at the same time as other actions like arms and head and mouth and tail, that is tough work.
The end of Finding Nemo.
Does this 20 years later. The bigger creature, a smaller one eats the bigger one.
Had some film. There was film at the very end of the roll there. I just did those quick little animations.
And this is the set Andy had built for King Kong. And that was a test creature I did with an actual armature with wire and wood and stuff. Just regular wire. And after you'd bend it too much, the wire would break, so it wasn't any good.
These are a whole bunch of basically failed matte attempts to do matte shots. And I actually would film one half of it, wind the camera back in a dark closet, take the film out of the camera, and put it back in and do the other half of the matte, which some magazine told me how to do it. It clearly doesn't work because it shakes so much and it really gets scratched up when you do it. And here's, amazing how easy this stuff is to do now with video. The split screen of, my mom there. Well, not necessarily with this stuff because you have an animated creature on the left side, which, of course, is so badly scratched and moving, it ruins the effect. But you can't really do animation too easily in video yet that I know of. It's a funny creature, of course, influenced by the creatures in Empire Strikes Back. The robots, rather. And here's a short I actually did on Rudolph Drive called The House. But I was using the wrong grade of film throughout all this stuff. Unfortunately, it's so grainy and so dark, and I really worked a lot on this stuff, especially when the chairs are moving like that. That is a lot of work. I'm stepping in there between every frame to move it a little, coming back to click a frame. You're talking, and that's a lot harder than doing the clay stuff, a lot harder. And I brightened it here with, modern effects, brightening effects, but it's pretty horrible looking imagery and grainy. And that's the end of the house. Pretty cool little haunted house, kind of, whatever you want to think of it, short.
I started experimenting with a moving camera. That's another tricky thing to do with panning and stuff like in tilting here, because you have to tilt it one frame at a time at the same time as you're animating your creature. You have to remember, after you've moved the creature, did I remember to pan a tiny bit?
And this is just an influence from, what is it, the seventh voyage of Sinbad, I think. It's a big dragon tied up to a chain. That's where I was trying to do that whole thing like he did. And moving the camera, too.
And here's Pete. This is the end of the reel here. Pete ends up here in 81. We were freshmen, or after we were freshmen. And he wanted to do this funny Eddie Van Halen thing where he makes a guitar disappear. I don't know why we filmed it in like the shadow. I mean, he's underneath the gazebo there, and you can't even really see his head too well. I could brighten it up if I wanted to. And that's the end of the reel. Thanks for watching. That was a lot of fun. Bye-bye. So long, Pete. 23 years ago.